Hello. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. It's a recorded presentation, and I'm going to be answering questions supposedly live after it. Welcome, and let's start. My name is Maria. I'm a game developer and technical artist at synesthetic It's a small studio in New York. I'm a co-founder, and I do research and design and generally participate in all the studio projects. We're a small studio and we're focused on emerging technology. I'm also currently working as a VR designer at prismsvr.com. It's a startup that creates educational games for improving STEM literacy in schools. This is some examples of our studio work. So we mostly work in real time. We're making games, installations, experimental research, AR, VR, something like that. We also are working with artists on dance performances, doing visuals, and we shipping games sometimes. The recent one being Bizarre Barber that you can buy on Steam or on Oculus store and play in your VR headset. And this screenshots is from our recent launch from Prisms VR. When I work as a VR designer, it's a learning module for schools that teaches exponentials on the example of how virus spreads, and it's called Pandemic by Prisms. You can also buy it on Steam. Okay, now you know a little bit about me and what I do. And I'm gonna tell you how I use Houdini, and we'll come to MIDI eventually. It's just I want to give you some overview of what's going on in my life and why on earth I decided to use MIDI in Houdini. So usually I work in small, agile, multidisciplinary teams, no more than 6 people. So we are generalists with one thing that we love and know better. For me, it's basically special design. So we all have like some sort of visual background, like visual stuff, visual effects or animations. So we don't have art director, but we are bringing your own art director from the side of your heart. Basically, all the work happens in real time. So I don't do any motion graphics or like modeling that's separate from the actual thing. Wherever I model, has to be super optimized and run smoothly on solid 72 and 90 FPS because that's the frame rate for most VR headsets. There is even higher frame rate, but I mostly develop for Quest nowadays. So Quest is 72, 90 frames per second. So all my assets, all my animation, everything I do should have this frame rate. And as a real-time developer, I'm very used to immediate visual feedback, so I cannot afford to wait for render because my renders happen in real time. We also employ iterative development based on feedback cycles, and that means we have a lot of changes every week, and changes can be absolutely everything, from the shapes and designs and colors and animations of our models to actually changing the code. That's why I needed a very solid instrument in Houdini when I can apply real-time changes to accommodate our super fast development process. So I needed to spend exactly 0 time on redoing stuff. I wanted this process to make maximally fast, cool, and efficient. So that's why I started to use MIDI. Just a little refresher for those who forgot maybe or never encountered the terms MIDI. So MIDI stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. It was invented very long time ago, in 1981. It has standards, it has conventions, and has committee that defines the standards. So currently MIDI 1 protocol can carry up to 16 channels of information. Data can be transferred via MIDI or USB cable. And basically it can talk to everything if it follows the standard. It's pretty interesting that many Houdini wranglers, modelers and visual artists also interested in music, so the chances are a lot of you actually have some like old MIDI keyboard or synthesizer or something with like knobs and faders, because you probably had or have this phase of like music making in your life. Well, I didn't, but I'm a game developer, so I worked a lot with joysticks and like this old arcade joysticks and custom buttons and everything that, you know, controls the game in real time. So of course I own like a ton of MIDI devices as well, even though I'm not a musician. But we're actually not talking about music here yet, because that was my first MIDI use case. So this was for my game, Bizarre Barber, and basically we had to design like plenty of characters and apply changes very, very fast. So we used this system of takes when we duplicated the character as a take and then changed like the whole, basically the whole body of the characters with MIDI and saved it as an entirely new character. Yeah, you can see we have like entirely 2 birds. So this process usually takes like maybe 3 minutes per character, and you know it's pretty much faster because you have this dexterity of using your 10 fingers while doing design. And so if you do like a regular interface, you have to do your faders one by one. So basically doing exactly same transformations for the take will take you 2 or 3 times as longer. Another thing is when you use your hands, you kind of like this idea of manipulating a lot of parameters at the same time kind of gives you more freedom and unexpected serendipity. Sometimes you're having this like pretty cool changes that you would have never done just by, you know, moving sliders in your interface one by one. Yeah, so this is some of the results from this generator using MIDI. So basically we made like 50 of these birds in the span of maybe, I don't know, 2 hours, something like that. And yes, we could have used the actual generator, but that meant sifting through the results. And I made a presentation about that, about why it's sometimes better to apply some manual touches than just doing random generation. So here you can see how my generated and MIDI designed characters are appearing in Unity in real time, and basically from this moment on, they are ready to get into our level editor into the game. So after we did that, so I did the presentation last year for Houdini Hive, and it kind of took on a little bit, and I started to receive some requests. People were interested on how did I set up this Houdini workflow and how can they replicate it. So I started to reply people, but then I eventually decided to make like a little course on that. So I could not tell but show and, you know, instruct people how to replicate my results. And even if not, you know, they can just use a provided asset. So this is a trailer for the course. This is my favorite MIDI device, Korg Nano Control, super cheap, super versatile, and plenty of other devices I have. Here you see the palette, and you see the old Razer Hydro controllers. So my inspiration for the course and for this whole workflow, and for this idea actually, was Andrew Lowell. I bet you all know him. He did this wonderful Houdini MIDI toolkit when you can make music in Houdini. So my workflow does include music, but you know, if you put it together with Andrew's offerings, you can pretty much do music and characters and design and animation at the same time. So if you ever wondered, you know, how to do like the most basic MIDI functionality in Houdini, so obviously it's MIDI in Node, a part of chops, channel operators, a mysterious part of Houdini. You actually don't even have to know that much. It's pretty easy to, just create a MIDI node and super quickly do your first MIDI mapping for like one of the assets that you already have. It will take you 3 minutes and it's pretty simple. You just tie like one of the parameter to one of your controller knobs and voila, you have motion, you have movement, and you can change everything wherever you want to. Yep, you just drop in this channel references here, and basically in 2 notes and 2 clicks, your first MIDI mapping is done. But you cannot actually do much with it. It's pretty useless, and probably that's why it's so underused and underappreciated in Houdini. Because setting it up, takes a little bit of time, and people usually they didn't get used to this workflow. It's a little bit unconventional. Also, the built-in MIDI mapping in Houdini has limitations, obviously. It's not fun, it's a bit cumbersome. It also doesn't look good, very chaotic layout. The problem is that you cannot have presets, and presets are important for creative control. What if you want or need to create 2 objects, one after another or at the same time? So it's really hard to set up. You can also run out on knobs on device super fast, especially if you have something really complex to animate or design or change. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to apply this concept of instantaneous MIDI mapping. And the software that does it correctly, that does it really well, is Ableton Live, when you can just touch this section and then you can touch your knob and voila, it's mapped. It's like super intuitive, it's super quick, and Houdini doesn't do that. So we just decided to replicate this functionality in Houdini basically. And we built this automapper plugin. Now this automapper is built in Python. It's a little Python module that handles everything for you. And so that was my first project in Python actually, and I really wanted to share my knowledge about how Python is not scary and how it's fully accessible for beginners. So even if you know just a little bit of facts, you won't be lost in Python. And this actually was a really good project for me to start in Python, to understand Python, and to get something really useful for my own workflow. So now I can just install this automapper, I can open like any of my assets and do instantaneous mapping. So basically I touch the parameter, I touch the knob on my device, voila, it's working, I can map everything to everything. So yeah, that allows me to do MIDI assisted design, and it's really cool, especially if you need to do some stuff like look deaf in real time. If you need to try different like animation ideas, or if you need manual touch-ups for your generators. I use it everywhere, just because I need this instantaneous visual feedback without renders or anything, and without looking for like opening every tab and looking for the needed parameters. So that drives me crazy, because for instance here you see we have head, eye, brow, ears, blah blah blah, wherever. So we have plenty of parameters here, and so it's pretty hard for me to switch between the tabs and look for like needed parameters. It's super easy actually to just put this to another controls and go crazy with it, because I know for sure like which is nose, which is eyes, and I can move them all together. Pretty cool. So MIDI can be used for visual arts extensively. They're already been using for VJing, light controls, controllers for games, animation, and everything else. Now you can use it for MIDI-assisted asset creation in Houdini. By the way, Blender also have some functionality like this. I never researched that, but people told me it's pretty much supports MIDI stuff. Yeah, here's a little bit information about Houdini MIDI note if you want to start. Also remember, it can interpret musical score in MIDI files and record data in real time, or do vice versa, so you can feed them data. And so the last thing I wanted to talk about, so maybe you like this presentation and you like this idea, but you don't own like any MIDI controller. So I just wanted to do a little primer for you. Hopefully it will be useful. A little primer on how to choose a controller. And here is your list of considerations. So you will need buttons, not keys. Keys are absolutely useless for the purposes of visual design and animation. Keys probably are helpful for music creation. You will want knobs and faders, a lot of them. You need to consider your budget, as if, are you going to use it for anything else rather than Houdini? So maybe you will be a practicing DJ, so maybe you will start making your own soundtracks. This is something you want to consider. Also size, because the desk space is not infinite. And ergonomics. So if you have any wrist issues or anything like that, carpal tunnel syndrome, so you might want to test the controller first, because you will be spending a lot of time interacting with it. So you want this piece of hardware to be really ergonomic. So this is my Love Forever, modest budget. It does break, but you can easily use it like for a year or two, and for $75 it's like the best purchase ever. It has tons of everything: buttons, faders, knobs. It's portable, it's nice looking, and you can have this limited edition, like an orange one or a white one. This is also more or less modest budget with like tons of knobs. This is medium budget, so maybe you will want that if you also plan to do some like serious music making and DJing. And this is high-end. This will serve you forever. So they're sturdy, they won't break, they won't chip, and this Monogram Creative Console is amazing because it's modular, so you can snap pieces together and do the configuration that fits you well. So this is almost all my time. This is the course. This is the link, so you can buy it on 3D Circuit. So if you know Python more or less well, you don't have to actually buy the course. You can just, see this functionality and totally replicate that on your own for maybe like a day of work. And really fun work with Python too. It's like pretty easy. And hopefully this course is going to be useful for you as well, even if you don't have or don't plan to buy any MIDI devices, because everything can be your input source. MIDI node doesn't actually care about, MIDI device. So you can use your mouse, you can use your keyboard, you can use game joystick for doing your stuff. So it's pretty agnostic. So buy my course, give me feedback, or like don't buy it, I don't know, you can just ask me for advice on how to do it. And thank you very much. You can find me on Twitter, you can shoot me an email if you have any questions, and you can also ask questions now. Again, my name is Maria. Thank you for your attention.
Hi, everyone. Maria, thanks so much for that presentation. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat or in camera.
Well, I have a question. So when you're building your systems up, you mentioned that controllers are really great, and I do agree. I mean, my day when I first was going in this, we used to have the PV, the big metal box with sliders and buttons. So that's the first thing that we tried with it. Have you done any sort of advanced controller work with MIDI using, how advanced have you gotten inside of chops? There's all kinds of dynamics as well, the lag, spring, and all of that. And I'm wondering how involved you get with your setups.
See, issue here is that anything that has chops, for instance, all this like cool stuff in chops, I can easily do like in Unity rather than in Houdini. So I'm rather interested in geometry manipulation and like some generic animations, which is like just drawing like the positions and rotations of the stuff without like actually using functions or something like that, because I can easily do it in Unity and I don't need, you know, to go in chops. I like chops, but not that much. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna be super interesting. And as far as like I can answer your questions a little bit different vector-wise, because we maybe haven't tried a lot of stuff with chops, but we tried a lot of stuff with different ways of how to input the data. For instance, we tried leap motion in Houdini, so you can see your hand and you can manipulate. You can see the actual hand and manipulate with your hand. So we tried Razer Hydra, which is like 6D of controller, similar to how VR headsets can have the controller similar to this one. Right, so I have this monogram palette that's used for virtual production, and it has like also various different arrangements. So we just love to connect some like weird stuff to Houdini and see like what happens. And sometimes it's really good, it's great. Because the problem of Houdini sometimes is this cognitive overload. When your interface starts looking at your Chrome browser, and at the end of the day, you have 15 tabs in your interface. And every tab, you have tons of content. And it's sometimes unbearable. And you can just, you know, just get rid of it and just use your body to actually interact with Houdini.
Yeah, I'm now that you've opened up the Unreal, or is it Unity that you're plugging into, right?
Yeah.
So are you doing any real-time streaming from Houdini into Unity, or is it just a geometry handoff? You just use Houdini to create the geometry, and then you build the systems in Unity.
It's kind of like, it's not real time, but it's pretty fast workflows for us because we wrote like custom exporter and importer from Houdini to Unity. So it's just one click and everything in VR. So you don't have to even like leave VR to actually work on it. So you can have like virtual desktop in VR. But it's not real time. So I'm not feeding it like directly in real time. Because again, Unity actually has like way better affordances for using like real-time and MIDI. So I just don't use it for things that I can do in Unity, but the geometry manipulation and animation is essential for me.
Yeah. So I guess you're not using Engine then to get the assets inside of Unreal at that point in time. You're just basically baking assets out of Houdini, right?
I do use Engine. Sometimes it's just like we have like super specific applications of Houdini. For instance, for like one of the projects, we needed to export this like bunch of point data positions and then recreate these positions in Unity and like spawn like shaders on them. So it's like pretty specific, and it's gonna be hard and very slow to use it with Engine. But like for more traditional tasks such as level design and stuff like that, placing the trees or wherever, like building bridges or fences. So of course, yeah.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Yeah, thank you.
Does anyone have any more questions? By any chance? No?
I was just gonna say your work reminds me a lot of Emotion Heap's like Mimu gloves. Have you ever seen her hook that up to like Ableton Live and do expressive composition with that? Yeah, it's pretty cool. Have you considered like other sort of controllers like that, like expressive type stuff like that? Or
I mean, that's what I've been doing for all this time. This is what I do in my studio. This is how I work. I'm trying to get some weird hardware and trying to apply it to some like weird ideas.
Yeah, very cool.
So Jeff here is
there any
actually
interesting
mini presentation.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I have another question.
Oh,
So now that we have KineFX in there, right? That opens up a whole new world of creating armatures and kits. And I'm wondering if you've played around with any of the KineFX tools yet.
Yeah, I did. And actually, so we have like pretty traditional usage for KineFX, which is retargeting and motion capture cleaning and stuff like that, adding animations to motion capture. It's like for Unity and for VR, it's essential because you want to have like real world looking avatars and stuff. Yeah, and we're actually like considering to use leap motion, which is now called ultra leap, for animation of the hands and hand joints. So basically like motion capture in engine. And for that, Unity is actually like super slow and like not reliable when you record the frames, the keyframes. So we'd rather do it in Houdini. Sometimes, you know, Houdini can cover for some flaws in other like real-time engines because like Houdini just do it better, even if it's not real-time.
And you just got to find a way to bake it out so it plays in real time.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, it works the same way in Unity. You just have to bake it and then play back, basically. This is how you do motion capture for hands. But it's weird and it's not reliable. And like the smoothing, you know, you have to write your own smoothing and stuff like that. So of course, KineFX saves a lot of time and like manpower on like manually writing the smoothing algorithm every time that you do like some mockup.
Yeah, I can safely say that inside of SideFX now, I go all the way back to 93, 94, 95, when I was using motion capture gloves and flock of birds and all that stuff. It was a great time helping, you know, just being a small part in building all these tools. But the thing that it really excites everybody right now is just the number of hooks that you can get out of Houdini and all these real-time streaming data and get it into these game engines. It's quite exciting, and we're back into hardware again. I can tell you right now, internally inside of SideFX, it's like a hardware renaissance. We've got more motion capture devices coming in all the time as we now start to move back into that world. Virtual production, it's like it's 1994 all over again. Everything's going back in camera on the film side, and games is becoming a lot more artist driven in terms of a lot of these tools that used to be just in the realm of C++ and developers, right? So you're definitely leading the way. Thank you.
Thank you. You also have this Monogram company that does this like controllers just in front of you in Toronto, actually. So they sent me their stuff and they mentioned that they always like look at you basically physically, literally look at you.
The building, you mean?
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. We're not in there right now though, which is sad, but yes, the building's a shell.
Yeah. So Jeff, you mentioned you have an update presentation. If you want to go ahead and start that whenever you're ready.
Yeah. So I wanted to, so basically the big thing, so I wanted to do a bit of an update on Houdini, 18.5 and the latest production build, which is soon to be usurped by another one. It's very, very soon, but it's 18.5.462. So I thought I'd do a bit of a presentation on the new Houdini for Unreal version 2.0. It's not Unity, sorry, but it is Unreal, and it's certainly speaking to a lot of the use cases of getting Houdini content data into the Unreal Engine. And of course, we're always looking at Unity as well. Both are very, very strong game content creation tool sets. But for Unreal, we're getting a lot of push. So I'm going to share my screen. Am I sharing my screen yet? So this is it's an involved presentation, but I'm just going to skip through it to show you exactly what's going on here. And so this ships with the latest production build of Houdini, a complete rewrite of Houdini engine toolset for Unreal. And it has many, many bridges in it, which make it really exciting. But we want to take a look at what was there before, because it's still valid. And the new version of the plugin is backwards compatible with the previous version of the plugin. And the fact that we put this in mid-release, make sure that when you're installing the latest production build that you also update all the plugins. You'll notice in the installer that there's a new installer for Unreal. Just don't assume that it's the same old Unreal. You do have to install all the new tools, and it is a bit of a migration if you're working on a project already using the older Unreal Engine plugin. And so, as we know, the default plugin allows you to do all kinds. It's basically supports Houdini assets directly inside of Unreal. We did a pretty decent job of working on the interface controls, and it allows you to place actors in the worlds, but it was missing a lot of functionality and features that a lot of users were asking for. So let me just go forward a bit here. So what's new in this new version? It is a brand new engine, and it's built for simple digital assets, but it can also be used for entire environments. And so we now have specific support for Unreal features that we'll take a look at a bit later. So we're using, for instance, BSP brushes now inside of Unreal that work hand in hand with the assets that we have built. And we've built a few nice assets in labs tools that actually can use these BSP brushes for doing volume blockouts. So customized serialization, and there was a lot of instability and crashes with the old version and data corruption. We were using a slower, outdated way of negotiating data between Houdini and Unreal, and now we've completely modernized that. And it's orders of magnitude faster. And the runtime module, contained a mix of Houdini engine logic, editor, and UI code, and that's all been simplified now. And it's a lot easier to build these tools. And yeah, so another thing we do as well is the results needed to be baked, and then the plugin needed to be deactivated in the final game. So that was a real limiting factor as well in the old version. So now, as I said, version 2 ships with Houdini 18.5, the latest production build, and it is compatible with UE 4.2.6, 4.2.5, 2.4, and 2.3. And we even ship the source code for you as well. So, and it's, as I said before, the plugin is no longer installed automatically. So you need to manually copy to the Unreal Engine's plugin folder. And so it's a brand new redesigned architecture, much more modular. All the happy Houdini engine logic is in the editor now, and it's inside the Houdini engine module itself. I think the big thing here is a lot of support for the native U properties, and it's all based serialization now. So all actors and components behave like native Unreal objects, and that was a big undertaking. So now Houdini assets inside of Unreal feel like Unreal assets. They no longer feel like Houdini assets. And we also brought in and worked a lot more on the UI inside of Unreal to support things such as folder tabs in the assets themselves. But the performance alone is worth the upgrade. So one of the things in the old version was very slow. The new version with the comparable asset is now 3 to 4 times faster. And we also support proxy meshes now. So you can even get those performances down even further. And you can actually split meshes as well. And you can use pack primitives. Now, pack primitives is fully supported inside of Houdini. So if you're doing pack primitives inside of Houdini, they automatically come in as proper first-class instance objects inside of Unreal. We also have templated geo output as well. So if you use a template flag on your SOP network, we even export the templates into Unreal. So, you get the collision geometry, the display geometry, we support level of details, and now we even support the template flag. Much improved instances, as I said. You no longer need blueprints in order to manage your instances. You can, but you don't need to anymore. So if you create instance objects inside of Houdini, they come across on Unreal as first-class instance assets, and it's great for doing foliage now. So you no longer have to run your foliage through blueprints in order to see it come properly inside of Unreal. And the curve output, we have much better support for curves. And we even have support for the native spline components inside of Unreal as well. So very, very much more low-level access with the new engine. And biggest part for me is the improved generic attribute support. So now if you load up your geometry with attributes, you can even bring them inside of Unreal, and they actually show up inside of Blueprints. So you can actually use attributes inside of Unreal. And I see that there's lots of chats, so I'm wondering, oh, there's some questions. I'll get them as I go. Pack primitives as instances. Does Unity and Unreal engines have feature parity now? I would say that it's leapfrogging right now. So Unreal, I think, now has leapfrogged the Unity plugin. So the Unity plugin now is seeing work, and it will probably leapfrog Unreal in the next release again. So they are leapfrogging each other. So it's the generic attributes inside of Blueprints. Now you can put any attribute you want on the geometry, and they'll show up inside of Blueprints, and you can do all kinds of work that you want. And also, we now support physical materials. So, and what's really nice about the physical materials is with regards to foliage, right? So very, very strong support for building foliage systems inside of Houdini, and have them show up inside of Unreal perfectly. Also inputs. As I said before, input meshes can be found inside Blueprints now. And you can actually have multiple input objects. And colliders and LODs can be imported with groups and attributes all created for you. And we support BSP brushes. So inside of Unreal, if you have assets, for instance, our new building generator inside of Labs uses bounding volumes to fill the containers with building. You can actually use BSP brushes. It's actually designed to work with the BSP brushes inside of Unreal, which is very powerful a way inside of Unreal for composing objects. And we can even provide bounds with the bound selector, and that will actually determine what gets imported where and when and how. Yeah, lots and lots of features there. And I'm just going to, because I'm going to go pretty quick. One of the main three legs of engine inside of Unreal and Unity is the automatic generation of UI on top of our digital assets, which is still the core component tool that you're bringing in both Unreal and Unity. But now we've added tabs, we've added radio buttons, we've added a lot more of the gizmos and widgets inside of Houdini are now supported inside of Unreal. So we fleshed that part of engine out as well, starting to build out more and more of the UI so it feels more and more like Houdini. Really cool there. And the UI has been completely revamped. So it actually feels, the Houdini integration feels like an Unreal plugin now. And what's really cool is session sync. So you can start up Houdini automatically from the menu inside of Unreal. And then the viewports sync and synchronize between Houdini and Unreal viewports. So any work you do inside of Houdini shows up in Unreal. Any work you do in Unreal shows up inside of Houdini. And so I think I got a video of this. Let's see how this plays. Just got to wait for it to show up. And so this is a really good example of session sync, where we have the Houdini viewport where we can navigate, and it's optimized for constructing geometry. And then the session sync inside of Unreal is applying all the decorations, applying all the materials, and doing that heavy lifting. And if we go inside of Unreal now, we do some edits inside of Unreal, they'll show up directly inside of Houdini as well. So this content generation editing, we're trying to bridge the best of all worlds, where Houdini has a rich palette of handles, which we're constantly improving with Python states and all the latest operators we're adding and all the digital assets you can create. So you build a really rich parameter world inside of Houdini. And then on the Unreal side, you can provide some artist hooks for maybe changing some of the other aspects of the asset as well. So this session sync is really cool bridge between Houdini and Unreal that allows you to interactively generate data. Okay, and I'll go forward. Blueprints has also seen a great improvement. As I said, you can have all the attributes show up inside of Blueprints now. All the attributes on your geometry, and you can use digital assets directly inside of Blueprint actors as well. Parameters and inputs automatically updated, placed inside of instances. So now if you build scripted interfaces inside of Houdini, they'll actually show up inside of Blueprints, which makes it really easy to build and do a lot more work inside of Houdini and have it automatically show up inside of Unreal. So this is a quick video of all of that. And here we can actually play actors. And this is a Houdini asset that we can bring in. And inside of blueprints, we can pick up the Houdini attributes on that, and then we automatically populate those attributes, and we can build a tree. But these trees now, we can create as many copies of these trees, and each tree itself will have its own controls inside of blueprints if we so wish. So we can actually populate an entire forest of trees and then pick one specific tree and then open up blueprints on that tree and then affect specific changes to that tree to make unique changes and work. So it's really powerful set of tools. I'm going to see if I can go a bit further on this. Another thing that we've done is PDG. If your asset if your digital asset contains a PDG network, all you need to do now to have those top operators automatically populate this widget inside of Unreal is to just provide an HE underbar prefix. And that exposes the node to the asset link. So when you bring that asset inside of Unreal, it'll automatically show you the output of that operator. And if you do HE underbar out, it actually automatically loads the node's results in Unreal when cooked. So you can use HE underbar to see the actual parameter interface for the operator. And then the output determines which nodes load the result in Unreal when they're cooked. And it's all asynchronous. So it's really powerful. So a lot of work went into support PDG as a first-class tool inside of Unreal. And you can build container, like really lightweight container assets that contain generic PDG graphs that once passed in meaningful data can then do meaningful work and output. So this notion of building container digital assets that have minimal amount of inputs, but then you work with them, especially with the PDG, you can then load them up and have them evaluate, and you can build these template graphs. So I'm just gonna, the last thing there's a whole bunch more, it keeps on going, but one more thing that is really important is world composition. We now support Unreal's world outliner and level building directly inside of Houdini. So we support our terrain as first-class terrain assets inside of Unreal. So it's a pretty cool tool set. And I think I've got a video on that as well. And see what we got. Yes, I've just looked at the question. It says, I'm sad Engine for Unity has worse UI. For now, as I said, they're working in tandem. But this just shows you how we can dynamically cook and load assets. And that's another aspect of Unreal Engine 2.0 is that you can actually hit play now. And we don't call it runtime, but we call it on demand or on call. So we can actually build terrain levels with these assets. So you can actually pre-visualize your levels before you have to bake the data out. So you can do a lot more now inside of Unreal before you have to bake the data out and build your level, right? It's pretty cool. And finally, the Niagara plugin. I thought I'd cover that as well. We have a new Houdini data interface to Niagara. We support point caches. So a lot of the effects work will go through Niagara. For instance, points as emitters, they can go in Niagara. You can do all kinds of really powerful things. It's very common now to cache point clouds out of Houdini and reuse them inside of Niagara and actually build on top of them. Everything from crowd systems to simple flocking systems, or even getting really simple flip sims inside of Unreal. And I think I'll show this and then we'll take some questions. Yeah, so here we have a simple flip simulation and we can bring this through Niagara and then we can control it completely. And remember, you can pass in any attributes you want as well in this system. So it really opens up a lot more doors for doing work. Okay, and finally the live link. And this is the part that I was leading to in the conversation before with Maria about, with Unity. There is some known paths have to do a lot of customization. With Unreal, we actually now provide a live link, and that's the Unreal plugin. But what it opens up the door for now is it lets you build control rigs in your motion capture device of choice. And then you can pass it through Houdini through KineFX. And then with the live link, you can go directly into Unreal's live link plugin. And it uses web server connection. And that means that you can use any device, including a MIDI device, to affect your rig or affect any data inside of Houdini and stream it directly inside of Unreal. And for instance, one great use case is to send KineFX rig hierarchy and transforms directly to Unreal from your motion capture device. It's still early days. You're going to start, if you're into this heavily, you're going to start asking questions about latency. I don't have any answers to you on latency, but I do have to say that this is a fully threaded, multi-threaded path. And it's a path that we're going to be working on continuously. As I said, I hinted at the fact that we have more and more devices, motion capture devices, coming in through the doors at SideFX. And this is one of the main motivators for this, is providing these sorts of tools for virtual production and games to better, easier take in motion filter inside of Houdini and then pass it into the game engine. So that's pretty much it. It's a lot for a point release. There hasn't been any really other major backports at this point in time. Tons and tons of bug fixes and obviously the latest production build, but this is the real big thing. It sort of slipped a bit under the radar, and it is a huge part. If you're an Unreal user, or if you're into these games type workflows, this is a really healthy upgrade for Unreal. And as I said, now Unity's got to catch up, and we're doing work on that as well. So there you go. That's my presentation. Quick for today.
Thanks.
And I'll field some questions.
For you. Yeah.
So let's see if we got some questions. Okay, so I got the SAD engine for Unreal, yeah. Is a Houdini engine roadmap for both game engines anywhere? Yeah, I really like the way that Unreal does the Trello and the way Unity shares all of that stuff. We're not there yet. We still are, relatively speaking, a small company, and we like to keep the roadmap a bit closer to our chest simply because we have to be nimble. We don't want to commit to something that we might have to back out on. You know, I only have to mention muscles to sort of bring back the long journey it's taken us to work on the muscle toolkit, several reboots of the muscles, and so that's probably one of the reasons why we don't share roadmaps in general. But if you want, you can always have private discussions. We can always talk offline, or see where you want to push us and how we want to go there, for sure. Yeah, but it's not public at this time. And so yeah, even less nasty motion smoothing code to write more emboldened pipelines. I say absolutely. I mean, I swear to this day, I was doing more in Prisms in 94 and 95 with motion capture and smoothing in real time with like in today's computer specifications, meager machines. I was getting real time with like full on hands pushing, 20, 30, 40,000 verts into OpenGL or GL at the time, because it was IRIX. And I think, everything's going back to the future, back to the 90s. Yeah, it just makes absolute sense that we're reinvigorated again and re-entering this part of the market. And I think the entire industry has seen the beginnings of what is KineFX. KineFX hasn't ended by no means. This is just our first introduction into what is going to be a growing framework for doing everything and anything animation. So yeah, and it makes sense that we're now getting back into rigs. Yes, Rococo, we have a suit. So yeah, we could definitely use beta testers for all of this. You can contact myself or Paul Ambrosian, and we definitely would love to talk to you about doing that. There's lots of side projects that we need help with, especially on this part, right? Yeah.
I had a question on the folders on the Houdini engine parameters panel. Are those, can you also do like multi-parms with that, where you add, add folders dynamically within Houdini Engine, or?
Yeah, we do support multi-parms now in Unreal.
Cool.
Yeah, with radio buttons and stuff. Yeah, so you can create dynamic UIs now. I think that's one of the big improvements with Engine in general, is that the first version you had to bake everything down. Everything had to be pretty solid, but now you can bake very late in the game now before you have to commit to final assets. So we really want to make it as seamless as possible for Houdini to work with Unreal and Unity as well. That's coming up. There's a lot of pull on us on the Unreal side, though, more on the film and the virtual production side. A lot of pull on us in that area, because it seems that Unreal has really invested a tremendous amount of money into studios, into these broadcast walls, we call them LED walls, and to do more in-camera work. Is exploding, and so I think that's another reason why this got a little bit more of attention at this point in time. Yeah.
And you had mentioned that the attributes are accessible within blueprints now, kind of arbitrary attributes that are coming out of Houdini.
Oh yeah,
Is it also accessible in materials as well? Like, can you read back like vertex attribute? Oh, sweet, cool, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's all attributes are fair game now. And the nice thing about it is you can now start building rigs inside of Houdini, and the attribute rigs. And if you have a blueprint that fits into that, it's just namespace, it's typical Houdini namespace, right? If they match, they'll link in. So that means you can actually build blueprints inside of Unreal that match up with the attribute assets that you have coming in. And as I said, trees are a great example of that, right? If you want to expose more of the hooks inside of Unreal and you're building tree assets inside of Houdini, you can bring all those material attributes as well. Yeah. So you can randomize leaf colors. You can pick a particular tree and maybe add a little bit more gravity to it based on an attribute inside of blueprints. Yeah, so it's this combination of using blueprints and the C++ interface that they have in Niagara that is really, really powerful. Yeah. Okay, so there's another question. Was wondering what kind of things have gone into virtual production with Houdini besides the sync, which is pretty awesome. Virtual production, believe it or not, I've been talking to quite a few studios and individuals about virtual production. The number one thing that everybody wants is Houdini to turn into just an Unreal editor. They want to do more and more work in Houdini and have it just work inside of Unreal. Right now, it's still a choice. If you have a pyro explosion, it's still a choice how you want to bring that into either Unity or an Unreal. In Unreal, you can bake it to cards. You can try all kinds of different things because there's no direct volume interface yet at this time. I mean, there's a lot of work to do on the Unreal plugin. So you have choices to make. And of course, the Houdini artist goes, no, I just want my volumes inside of Unreal, make it work. So we go, okay. And so it's just like more and more of that. Like, for instance, we did a lot of work with instances. Like, for instance, packed primitives in Houdini now do come in like the equivalent of what you would expect to be an instance object in either inside of USD or inside of Unreal. And then there's also the USD question. And I would say that in virtual production, you have two types of assets. You've got those assets that are approved, baked down, locked in, you plop them in place, and nothing changes, right? And they can be wrapped up inside of packages, Docker packages, and be manipulated in your standard game type build mechanism. But there's those assets that you don't want that to happen. You want them to be alive. You want them to be bidirectional. And those sorts of assets would be foreground trees, foreground agents, procedural props. Let's say there was a critical piece of a character that had a growing, flowing chain on it, or there's a part of a robot that had to be reactive and dynamic to what the director wanted to change on set. Then you would have to have a bit of bidirectionality happening between Engine and Houdini to keep those assets live. So these sorts of live link tools would bypass USD, right? So you could use USD, you can use FBX in these containers to bake assets down. But this live link is critical, right? Because it allows you to use these objects dynamically as you're authoring this data on the fly. Yeah. Good question, by the way.
Any more questions? Think. Oh,
That's it. Well, thank you very much.
thank you.
It was a pleasure.
FYI,
I love the MIDI stuff.
yeah, thank you so much, Maria, for the presentation. We are going to upload this presentation on our website, so if anyone wants to rewatch it, they're more than welcome to. It'll be on the SideFX.com website. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and Maria and Jeff, thank you guys so much for the presentations.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks so much.